Welcome to What the Futhark. This is the start of a short-form series exploring the Elder Futhark, the earliest known runic alphabet used by early Germanic peoples from the mid-2nd century CE to around 750 CE. The Elder Futhark contains 24 runes, each representing a sound. The names of these runes, words like cattle or ride, are known from medieval rune poems and are believed to have helped people remember their sounds, similar to how we might say A is for apple today. While this naming system isn't directly recorded for the Elder Futhark period, scholars reconstruct these names based on those later sources. These inscriptions predate the Viking Age and are found across what is now Germany, Scandinavia, and surrounding regions. As someone of Germanic heritage, I feel connected to its history and look forward to learning more as we explore it together. In this series, I'll focus on historical context, how these runes were used as letters, how their names relate to everyday life, and how symbolic interpretations emerged later in medieval and modern times. This isn't about divination, but I'll acknowledge how interpretations have evolved. If you're interested in language, culture, and history, follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Fehu comes from the Proto-Germanic word for cattle, illustrating the important role of livestock in early Germanic society, where wealth and survival were closely tied to herds. Before coinage, wealth was measured in livestock, and a primary form of wealth and trade. Fehu is the first rune in the Elder Futhark alphabet, but the reason for this ordering is unknown. The rune itself simply was used as a letter in writing and not as a symbol for cattle or wealth. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Fehu has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of prosperity and distribution of wealth. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. Urus comes from the Proto-Germanic word for aurochs, a large wild ancestor of domestic cattle. The aurochs was a significant and powerful animal in early Germanic Europe. It was hunted for meat, hides, and horn. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan tradition, Urus has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of strength, vitality, or endurance. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Thorisas comes from the Proto-Germanic word for giant. Linguistically connected to later Old Norse, giants, or Thusar, appeared as destructive and chaotic figures in early Germanic myth and poetry. Further, the word continued use into later Norse tradition. The association with thorn appears later in Anglo-Saxon tradition, reflecting how the rune's name evolved over time and regions. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Thorisas has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of chaos, force, or protection. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Ansus comes from the Proto-Germanic word meaning god or deity, a term found across early Germanic languages. It is linguistically related to Old Norse Aesir, the pantheon of gods from Norse mythos. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Ansus has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of wisdom, communication, or divine inspiration. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Raidho comes from the Proto-Germanic word meaning ride or riding. This root survives in related words across early Germanic languages, such as Old English, ride, and Old Norse, reith, all meaning riding and closely associated with traveling and journeys. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Raidho has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of travel, rhythm, or life's journey. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Kanaz comes from the Proto-Germanic word for torch or firebrand. Seen in related words like Old English, kane, torches were essential for light and protection in early Germanic life, used in homes, workshops, and gatherings. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Kanaz has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of enlightenment, creativity, or learning. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Grebo comes from the Proto-Germanic word for gift or generous offering, found in related words like Old English Yefu and Old Norse Grev. Gift-giving was a central practice in early Germanic societies, closely tied to social bonds, loyalty, and mutual obligation. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Grebo has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of generosity, exchange, or partnership. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Vunyol comes from the Proto-Germanic word for joy or delight, seen in related words like Old English win, which carries the same meaning. Joy and fellowship were valued aspects in early Germanic culture, particularly within kin groups and communities. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, wunyo has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of joy, harmony, or well-being. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune named Hagalas comes from the Proto-Germanic word for hail, as in hailstones, found in related words like Old English hagel and Old Norse hagal. Hailstorms were dangerous and destructive in early Germanic life, capable of damaging crops, homes, and livestock, as they still are today. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Hagalas has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of disruption, crisis, or natural forces. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune named Now These comes from the Proto-Germanic word for need or necessity, appearing in related words like Old English need and Old Norse nauthe. The concept of need captures the hardships, constraints, and obligations that shaped early Germanic life. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Now These has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of necessity, endurance, or fate. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune named Isa comes from the Proto-Germanic word for ice, found in related words like Old English and Old Norse is. Ice was a defining feature of the Northern European environment. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Isa has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of stillness, stasis, or frozen obstacles. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune named Yera comes from the Proto-Germanic word for year or harvest, reflected in related words like Old English Yera and Old Norse ad, both meaning year. The harvest cycle was a critical part of early Germanic life, marking time and ensuring survival. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Yera has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of cycles, natural rhythms, or fruition. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune named Ahwaz is a scholarly reconstruction most often linked to the Proto-Germanic word for yew, a tree known for its long life, flexibility, and later associations with resilience and death. Related words include Old English eol and Old Norse ir, both meaning yew. The meaning and pronunciation of this rune remain hotly debated, reflecting some of the linguistic uncertainty around parts of the Elder Futhark. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Ehwas has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of endurance, protection, or connection between life and death. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. Perthro, the 14th letter of the Elder Futhark. The exact meaning of the name Perthro is unknown, but some scholars link it to the concept of a lot cup or a dice cup, a container used for casting lots or gaming. This interpretation is based on later linguistic connections but remains debated. Related words include Old English's peoroth, though its meaning is also unclear. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Perthro has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of chance, fate, or mystery. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The name Agris is a scholarly reconstruction. Some have linked it to the Proto-Germanic word for elk, as in Old Norse Relgia, but this connection is debated and uncertain. Later traditions associated this rune with protection, but its original name and even pronunciation remains unknown. Agris appears in later medieval rune poems, where it began to take on symbolic interpretations. In modern neo-pagan traditions, it has been widely interpreted as a sign of protection or defense. We will not be showing the image of this rune because it has been appropriated in recent history by certain ideologies, and we are avoiding displaying both out of respect for that context and due to the platform moderations and policies. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune named Sowolo comes from the Proto-Germanic word for sun. This word appears across early Germanic languages, including Old English and Old Norse, sol. The sun's place in language illustrates how important it was to daily life and the natural world for early Germanic peoples. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Sowolo has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of success, guidance, or illumination. These symbolic meanings arose after the Elder Futhark period. We will not be showing the image of this rune because it has been appropriated in recent history by certain ideologies, and we are avoiding displaying both out of respect for that context and due to platform moderation policies. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Tiwaz comes from the Proto-Germanic name of the god Tiwaz, a deity associated with law, justice, and warfare. The name is also present in Old English, Teal, and Old Norse, Tia, both referring to the same god. In early Germanic tradition, this figure was an important representation of order, leadership, and martial honor. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Tiwaz has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of justice, honor, or leadership. These symbolic meanings arose after the Elder Futhark period. We will not be showing the image of this rune because it has been appropriated in recent history by certain ideologies, and we are avoiding display both out of respect for that context and due to platform moderation policies. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Berkenol comes from the Proto-Germanic word for birch. The birch tree was common in early Germanic regions and often associated with fertility and renewal. The term appears in Old English, Berok, and Old Norse, Brekon, both meaning birch. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Berkenol has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of fertility, nurturing, and beginnings. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Echwaz comes from the Proto-Germanic word for horse. The word appears across early Germanic languages, including Old English, Eol, and Old Norse, Jord, both meaning horse. Horses played an important role in early Germanic life, used for travel, warfare, and a marker of status. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Echwaz has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of partnership, movement, or trust. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Manas comes from the Proto-Germanic word for human or person. This word appears in Old English, man, and Old Norse, mathror, both meaning person or human being. In early Germanic societies, this term referred broadly to people or mankind. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Manas has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of humanity, community, or the self. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Lagus comes from the Proto-Germanic word for lake or water. The term appears in related words like Old English's lagu and Old Norse lugur, both meaning water or sea. In early Germanic societies, water was essential for survival, transport, and daily life. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Lagus has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of flow, intuition, or life energy. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Ingwaz refers to Ing, an early Germanic deity associated with fertility and ancestral lineage. The name appears in Old English, Ing, and Old Norse, Ingvi, where this figure is sometimes associated with Freyr, a major Norse god of fertility and prosperity. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Ingwaz has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of fertility, potential, or stored energy. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. Welcome to What the Futhark. Today's rune is Dagaz, the 23rd letter of the Elder Futhark. The rune name Dagaz comes from the Proto-Germanic word for day. This term appears in Old English, dag, and Old Norse, dagra, both meaning day. The idea of day and its cycles would have shaped how early Germanic peoples organized their time, work, and seasonal rhythms. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Dagaz has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of awakening, clarity, or transformation. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. The rune name Othala comes from the Proto-Germanic word meaning heritage or ancestral property. The term appears in Old English, Ethel, and Old Norse, Othal, both referring to inherited land or property passed within families or kin groups. In early Germanic societies, this land was central to ancestry, family identity, and survival, connecting generations. In later medieval rune poems and modern neo-pagan traditions, Othala has been interpreted symbolically as a sign of inheritance, homeland, or ancestral ties. We won't be showing the image of this rune because it has been appropriated in recent history by certain ideologies, and we are avoiding display both out of respect for that context and due to platform moderation policies. Follow for the next rune in this Elder Futhark series. Thanks for watching this series on the Elder Futhark. Over these videos, we've explored the historical context of all 24 runes, how they were used as letters, where they've been found, and how their names reflect early Germanic language and life. We also acknowledge how later traditions from medieval rune poems to modern neo-paganism has added symbolic interpretations to these ancient characters. See you soon for the next chapter!